Hello, I am Stephanie, a speech language pathologist with Sturgeon School Division. I have been with the division for many years, primarily with the younger students in pre-kindergarten and kindergarten, but I've had some various experiences with grade school students as well. I really love the education setting, and I really love this connection with families. Uh, And I really love talking about speech and language. Uh, so, uh, you need a girl to talk for an hour about speech and language activities. I'm probably the one. And especially today, because I got to pick speaking about some of the things that I really enjoy doing with children. But I was thinking specifically of families and things that I do that they could do also, things that I think transfer fairly well among settings and are pretty easy access. Nothing I'm going to talk about today came from a speech language pathology catalog or even the teacher store like Education Station. It's all just things you would find typically in the world of young children. I know there isn't going to be I don't expect, at least at this point, a lot of questions or comments, um, but I always welcome them by email or text, so I will add that handout to the list as well. Um, it will be a little bit eclectic today, just because as I started doing this, I kept adding things and finding things, and I really want to start with some of those activity ideas because often I'll give a little bit of the background and some of the information and strategies first, and then we get rushed through the more concrete things and what I think are often the more fun things. So we'll start there and try and work other things in as well. I will just a couple things I want to touch on before though. It's just I really hope parents appreciate how much they already do already. I think, of course, families are so busy and parents are doing so much and wearing so many hats all of the time. But I don't know that you also recognize how much you're doing in terms of encouraging your child's development, particularly with respect to communication. I'm always impressed by the parents that I meet, caregivers that I meet who have just great intuition and are naturally using a lot of these strategies. And so, what I would hope from this presentation or any others that I do with families is that I just hope to help them be more aware of the things they are already doing, to be aware of the opportunities to do more, and just to be a little bit more intentional, a little bit more planned in what you're doing so you can do it more often and maybe do it with a little bit more clarity and higher frequency, both in terms of the number of practice opportunities you can work in, as well as just looking throughout the day and finding more opportunities that way. I will note also, though, that I'm a parent too. And I know that the roles are different between a parent and a speech language pathologist. Parents have so many advantages. You, of course, are you have that natural connection with your child. They are the one that you are who they trust. You have that special back and forth dynamic. You have access. You have just that availability to be with them. And you really know all of their interests and their challenges. On the flip side of things, one of the harder parts of being a parent is also that special connection, that trust, and that familiarity. Because those things also lead to children being very safe and comfortable with you, but then maybe being more comfortable resisting or avoiding or otherwise making doing some of these practice activities more challenging. And then, of course, as parents, I know you've got time constraints, lots and lots of things going on. And even just finding space and the convening demands of siblings and household responsibilities. So um, please know we understand and respect that maybe you don't have the same opportunity to do some of the structured kind of practice activities, although I will talk about some of those, but that hopefully you can think of ways to incorporate some of these activities or suggestions into what's already going on in your house. So it doesn't feel like that much of an extra pressure or demand. I like to say communication is everything. Um, and it's not just because I'm really invested in speech language pathology and communication, but because I really do think it's very integral to how we move through this world as humans, and it is integrated into all of our interactions. Most behaviors are really a form of communication. It is our thoughts to ourselves are really a type of communication too. So I do think there's a lot of value in putting some of that awareness and intention into the communication side of things. But it also makes it really easy because there's communication going on throughout your day as part of everything, even while you're doing those really um, routine things like, getting kids to bed or getting them dressed in the morning. Communication is involved, even when you're doing things like driving in the car or getting supper ready. There is communication involved. So I hope that is both a little bit inspiring and encouraging. During those daily routines, you have a really tremendous opportunity to be a language model for your child. So you could be the example of a good uh, set of vocabulary, sentence structure, you're putting speech sounds in, and you're modeling the dynamic of listening and speaking in that back and forth of conversation. So, with intentionality, just choosing particular words or sounds to really highlight during those times. And highlighting is a term I use a lot. It really means drawing attention to those particular skills, whether it's a sound or a word, or it could be an academic skill as well. So you're going to want to do that as many times as possible, bombarding. You're going to want to make it as really clear as possible. So you might be using a little bit slower, more emphatic speech with bigger swings of intonation. We want it to still sound natural, but with just a little bit more oomph. Uh, then, if you want to move into something beyond what you would always be doing in your natural daily communication, you can look at planning something that is still playful because I think that's really important for our kids. We want to do this learning through play most importantly because we want children to want to practice with us. So if it is fun, that's going to make that so much more likely. But also because play is the way children learn best. It's what's most memorable and meaningful for them. My occupational therapy colleagues like to say that play is the occupation of children, or it is the work of children. So all of the things that we can do to make something a little bit more fun uh, gets that buy-in, gets the attention, but it also helps to make that learning um, map in ways that is meaningful for kids, and it really makes them more likely to try again. Oh, sorry. It is great to think also that as much as possible, we want kids to be participating and taking turns by using their communication, whether that is a word, a sound. For some of our kids, it might be a nonverbal language contribution, like a look, a reach, or a gesture. But whereas that, giving those opportunities is something we really want to try and find as many opportunities for as possible. It is also really positive to have times when you're giving those lots of listening opportunities where you're doing the modeling, still with some wait time, and also doing uh, that more frequently, giving lots of opportunities to do that, to listening for them to hear the models. When we're moving to something uh, around a practice skill, I always think shorter, more frequent opportunities is better. We always want to end on a good note while kids are still enjoying, still attentive, still having some success with the target. We always want to pick things to work on that kids will have some success with. If it is something where you're getting a lot of challenge, requiring a lot of correction and a lot of support, I would just step back and choose something else to focus on, because we really want kids to be working at that level where they're feeling a bit of challenge, but they're also feeling the success, because that is going to give them the positive practice to build on. And again, it's going to want to make them to keep coming back. For all the things I talk about, we want that interest and engagement. So I would tailor to the interest of a child and also to their language level and to their attention level and to their movement needs. So it can be a lot to think about, but you know your kids so well and you can see if something's working or not. So I just think giving yourself that little bit of flexibility to not feel like you have to do things in a really rote way or really consistent way, and making it most effective and a good interaction between you and your child. One of the other really valuable things about learning through play and doing things in a fun manner is that whereas I want children to be attentive to what the skill we're working on is, I don't want them to be hyper focused on that. When kids really get used to a particular practice context, and I know, like, I often am that practice context, they see me and they start to be more careful in how they're thinking and trying the skills. Uh, it does make for a good practice, but it can make it harder for them to start to do those things when it's with a different person, when it's in a different game, when it's in a different setting. And long term, we want it to generalize to being able to do skills all the time in their natural communication. So having a playful, um, flexible type of activity also helps with that carryover to natural speech or carryover to spontaneous language. We talk about generalization, and you may have heard a lovely presentation, or we'll hear another lovely presentation about that as well. Um, Finding different ways to approach the same skill and to do it in ways that are meaningful for kids, which again is play in play, can help towards that being able to use the skills across context. Now, I tend to use a lot of objects, in, whether it's silly manipulatives, whether it's actual games or toys. I find that those are more interesting for kids, really tends to get their curiosity going and keep them with me. And I also find that those things relate more to the real world and can help with the generalization. Again, I'm not going out and, for the most part, looking to purchase particular things, sets of things. What I'm using is things that are from my personal toy collection, or now I have raided the collection of my children who are a bit older. I admittedly have a bit of a problem, and I would not encourage that for anyone in terms of saving everything. But because you're in this prime time of working with your littles, you're going to see a lot of those lip bags or prizes or, you know, rewards from the dentist. Those kind of things can come through. And I would encourage you to keep an open mind and see how those things might be used in some of your practice activities. Um, I do also do a lot of purchasing through the dollar store, to be fair. But libraries and your friends are also great resources for borrowing things or maybe building a shared collection. All right. One of my favorite things to do, um, and it kind of is a bit of an umbrella activity that can lead into lots of different ways, is what I call seeking activities. So where we are finding things. Uh, that plays really well into kids' natural curiosity. It gives them a little bit of a movement opportunity. It is always a little bit different. And that novelty is a really good way to get the neurons firing and to get the learning engaged in different ways so that it's more accessible. Your recall is a little bit more accessible. When I talk about seeking things, um, there's a couple different ways I go about it. One of the ways I like best for home or community is really going out to find things based around a particular skill or concept. So flight target sound was we're going to go around and we're going to look for things that start with, or for some kids who maybe are working not so much on speech sounds, but on that connection between sound and print for literacy. You might want to use the sound, but we're actually looking for S. And it just gives a few different talking opportunities or a few different contrasts that you would make. Uh, Generally, sounds and letters correspond, but there are always a few exceptions. English is wonderful for that. It could be for other academic skills. So we're going to go find things that are orange, or we're going to go look for circles in our world, or we're going to go look for a category of things. Like, let's go find things that are soft. Or maybe we're going to go look and find different examples of things that go. So there's different skills that we can approach in that way. One of the things I like to do to make it more motivating and to really encourage that novelty. So even though we're kind of doing the same thing week to week, it has a little bit of specialness to it and then be a little bit memorable each time, is I use some props. So for seeking things, those are usually around seeing. So I might use some special classes that are going to help me find things. They don't really. And sometimes, honestly, they're going to be a little bit of a distraction until they get used to the tool. But it does, in the long term, tend to keep engagement. So that can be anything silly. There are a myriad of options for things that are I could probably do 52 weeks of just different glasses and goggles, some of which really do affect your vision. So I have things like these kaleidoscope goggles, or maybe an actual kaleidoscope, which are going to allow me to get more language going around the activity because things are going to look different in it. And then we're still going to have to keep doing our seeking to find uh, whatever type of skill we're focusing on. Things like a flashlight can help. Um, I'll come back to that one in a minute. Or a magnifying glass gives those kids that real sense of adventure. Sometimes we'll pretend to take pictures of the things that we find, or maybe we're going to try and really look in different ways. So using any of these kind of props can help to get that buy-in and then keep the activity going. the kinds of things that we're going to collecting, if possible, if it's in the home or maybe an outdoor nature type study, and if it's things we actually going to collect, um, really do think there's some benefit for getting a set of um, objects. So these always look like little bags of junk. And if you don't know the common, but I'll be honest, I have had many bags thrown out from classrooms over the years because people look at it and go, I don't know what it is. But if you were the ones who are collecting, you would know. I have a car and a cup, and we found some cards and a corn on the cob and a cat. So those were all things that started with k sound. So I keep all my things together in a bag. We've had fun looking for them. As we're looking, we were talking about them, getting lots of opportunities to hear and practice. And then we're also coming up with a set of things that then can be my practice set. They're things that really came from my real world, so they're going to have extra meaning. We've already familiarized with them, so uh, kids will have a model already of what they are, and then it's just kind of handy to have these things. And again, I like to use manipulatives because if I use this in a practice task, it's probably going to keep kids even more focused in using a picture or a digital picture. Not that I don't use those as well. They can be great too, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. But I really like my objects. And then I've got them available to do other activities too. So I had it right there. Simply putting things in a bag or a box, or it could be a shelf, and making it, their child's special bag of put things or shelf for their red things or their box of circles. It again reinforces that meaning and learning, makes it more special. But then I got my bag full of things, and then the elements of surprise or mystery. I mean, that is a wonderful thing about working with children of this young age is they really, really do believe in magic, and they are always curious and up for adventure. So putting things in the bag and mixing them up, and then we can pull one up. Do we catch? And there you've got another practice activity. I might take that same set of objects and do a bit of a memory game. So if I have a little bit of flair, never hurts. So I realize I'm very much in shadow and I'm trying to fix it. A little bit of flair never hurts. So not you don't have to, but if I had a set of little things, I might put them on a fancy plate or tray. I'm going to use my scarf. I'm going to show them cat, car, corn. I'm going to do a little bit of a big deal about covering them up. And then I'm going to uncover them. And we're going to see if we can figure out which one is missing. And chances are, anything they say is going to give you a practice cut, even if they say, you're going to get one of your target sound words, even if they don't say the right one. Gives you more opportunity to practice to talk. If they say something that doesn't have the sound, and this can be true when you're collecting it as well, it's a great opportunity for a listening task in terms of the sound awareness skills or phonological awareness skills, and you can use that to contrast. So if we're looking for our kuss sounds, and a kiddo takes a pen And I didn't hear our cuss sound in there. I might think about, um, are there other ways we could talk about it? What else could I call it? Can't think of anything else right now that starts with a k. What can we do with it? We could holler. That's got a k. Still, you're reinforcing what the child has said. You're making them know you're listening, and interested in their ideas. But then we're shaping it background to what our target was, and you're getting that sound contrast, that phonological awareness piece. Uh, looking, taking those same things that you found and then just playing other seeking games where the child gets to hide them and you find them and back and forth can just be a really simple way to expand on that same activity. Again, kids love hiding, and again, they love seeking. Um, when we're doing that kind of hiding and seek for the pictures, it can be a really good time to work on some language skills as well when we're giving the clues or we're talking about where we found them. Then you can be working on some of the language skills for position words like it was under, it was behind, it was beside. And that can be just more ways to get more bang for your buck, to get more out of an opportunity. Um, maybe that is purely the objective of the activity, though, if that is a good language goal for your child. Using, if you keep sets of those things you've collected, you can use them for some sound sorting activities. So I'm going to mix up some from my set and my cassette. So here, like I have, and you don't have to make them fancy. Before I did these laminated ones, I just scribbled on scrap paper the print cue, because that is a really meaningful cue for kids to get some connecting sounds and letters. And then I took these things out, so bigger, fancier bag to make it more motivating, not see-through. And then we would pull one out. I would say it to make sure they had a really strong model, because if this is a tricky sound, it's going to be harder for them to sort. Leaf. Do we hear our L or our B? And then we would sort. So those kind of sorting things is really a higher level activity in terms of phonological awareness. But at the same time, it is the kind of thing that often a lot of preschool worksheets, that ask you to cut out the ones that go with the letter or the sound and, leave out the ones that don't. That's what they're doing. So this is just a more concrete way to practice that. Might be a little more accessible for some kids. And we want to, again, make them be successful. So we are guiding and supporting them at the level that they are at. So if you have to give more cues, if you're leading rather than putting more onus on your child to produce the answer, that's just fine, because you're still really experiencing those concepts. I think that is that. I'm going to stop sharing that one. Let's just wait a little bit. So many things. One of the things we can do, though, when we're looking at um, activities or collecting things, you want to do that activity, but the things are not collectible, either because they're not yours or because they're too big or too precious and special, or if we wanted to get into things that aren't as tangible, they don't have a concrete object, but maybe they're picturable. We can represent them with a symbol or a picture. Then we can look at doing the same type of activity, either with actually going out and taking images with digital cameras, a part of every phone, which tends to be in every pocket now. That's become a lot easier than when I first started this, and was actually using real cameras and real film. But that can be kind of fun too, if you can afford it and find it. Um, and then we've got a collection of pictures that we can either look at digitally or even print, and then you start to make that dictionary of words that are special to you, or categories that you're working on again, or things that actually, like a true dictionary, start with a letter. If you don't uh, have opportunity or are looking for something different than something that permanent, um, there's all sorts of other ways to represent those non-object but still picturable things. And again, I like to use that novelty of just like lots of different options. So I'll do all sorts of print options, things like your magnet doodle drawing or whiteboards, actual pens and papers, but then maybe sometimes we use, the funny pens or smelly pens or other things that make it more interesting or motivating. It is amazing to me how kids love to feel grown up. And so giving them a clipboard uh, and paper and sending them off to find things, and they will either do their pre-writing or drawing to represent them. It can be really motivating. And then just switching that up. Sometimes I've got my medium-sized clipboard, I got a big clipboard, or I've got a mini clipboard. You can also work this with teamwork, where kids are helping to find them and describe them, and then you either do some describing, you write the words for them, which is always a good idea because most of our littles are pre-printers, but it's nice to make that connection to print. But maybe you're drawing the pictures too. I also like the old-fashioned collages, where you're looking through flyers or magazines. Those things are less common now, but they're still can be a good option for finding pictures. And just searching, talking about them, doing that listing, practicing, contrasting can be really positive. Um, with Google Images too, you have the world at your fingertips too. So depending on your skill levels and your child's interests, that might be something that you explore as well. Just the personalizing of it, involving kids and looking and picking the images helps to get that motivation. And again, you're also creating a set of words that you can review and practice in other ways at different times. I think all of these handouts are available to you, both through the chat and through the portal. Um, this just gives a little bit more follow-up on that idea of the creating a dictionary. One of the things that I didn't talk about, I haven't done in a while, is turning some of those things for a collage or for your dictionary that you've pulled out of magazines or printed or are taking out of flyers or old books, is the idea of turning them into glue. And so there's a little recipe on there that you could use to make glue, and it is a child-safe glue in terms of that if they do lick it or if they lick too much of it, it is safe. They actually call it tasty. And if that is motivating, I think that's really great. I think that is something you want to be clear about the expectations too, because we don't want kids licking stickers or stamps too much. There are also even easier, sort of some pre-made sets of picture cards based around sounds or letters or a category or a theme that you can pick up. This is one of the few speech languagey things I'll show you. You can get sets of picture cards that come produced based around those sound patterns, and you can talk to your friendly neighborhood SLP and she might be able to hook you up with some of those, or you could research it on your own. But I don't really think it's necessary. This is a set I created just using those Google search, just images printed from the internet. Uh, there are some other printable resources available. Again, your friendly neighborhood SLP, or me, even if I'm not your friendly neighborhood SLP, I'm still friendly, I hope, and happy to help get some of those specific printed sets. There are some available online. For example, this is a set from a website called Mummy Speech Therapy, and what the title implies is a therapist who's also a parent who has created a great inventory of resources for parents that are free. I think you might have to put it in a email address now, but I haven't been bombarded by any follow-up from them. And anyway, you get access to a whole range of picture stimulus sets for different sounds and different places of words. Again, the dollar store can be a good resource. This is one I found for shapes and colors. There we go. That was really reasonably priced. I would never use these as flashcards. I would always use them in play, but it's nice to have that set of materials done up for you. So I'm really losing the battle with the shadows. Just shove it to that little bit. Yeah, might be better. Nope, not if I move. All right, so all of those practice activities, I would say, fall in a semi-structured type of framework, where we're putting some clear expectations and some parameters on the activities, are really trying to get the child to engage in a back and forth, so that we're talking about something, listening, maybe getting some feedback. But you have flexibility in how much of that structure you want to put on it, and how fluid you would like the activity to be. I would say the next step would be activities that I would consider drill play, and that they're really a little bit more concrete in terms of the going back and forth, where we're going to exchange a turn of a practice for something motivating. But they're still playful, they are still motivating, and they still allow for lots of opportunities to talk and allow that more natural element, so that it's not practice where we're just saying the words and getting feedback, and it's like going through a list. It is a bit more conversational, and there's those little bit of motivating but distracting elements that in the long term should help with generalization. So one of my favorites, and then will tend to work in throughout the year, because it'll also go with themes, which is something else I would really another one of my favorite things is using a theme. It's to use craft type activities. And I tend to call it foam craft, because you can get these cut out foam shapes. But they can also be cardstock. They can also be felt. And they can be all sorts of different shapes, which again reinforce a theme that may be seasonal, so a time of year or a holiday, or could reinforce other vocabulary that's meaningful, like shapes like the star, or a hand for body parts, or a car for things that go. And the way I use these is we start with the blank form. I like to work in choice, which is another one of my favorite things, because giving kids choices allows them to feel a bit more in control. It empowers them to be a little bit more proactive in the activity. So that tends to just also make them more interested and engaged. And giving the choices between colors, between shapes, can also help with that novelty. So even though we're doing the same type of activity, there's that little bit of variation. And repetition with variation is a really effective way to reinforce learning for kids. And then I'll use a variety of different things to embellish our shapes then. And we're going to trade for these. I want to make sure that I'm really clear up front what the trade is going to be, whether we're going to do one practice. So one, you're going to say either a word that I say first if it's imitated, or they're going to talk about a picture or an object if we're looking more spontaneous. And if it's one for one, they take the practice turn and then they get whatever we're embellishing with. I sometimes use stickers. I'll use fancy crystal stickers because I love sparkle. Or even just basic foam shapes, because that reinforces those meaningful color and shape concepts. Or sometimes it may be something more specific to a theme. So shapes of ornaments before Christmas, or we're coming up to Easter and some of those Easter eggs and bunny shapes, things like that. I find often those one-for-one turns are what kids are most interested in. But when I know the kid and they've got some familiarity with the task, I'll let them ask. Like, do you want to? I'll ask to let them choose. Sorry. So I'll say, do you want to do one turn, one sticker, or whatever it is? Or I'll say, do you want to do 5 turns and then 5 stickers? Or I'll even say, do you want to do all your turns and then all your decorations? Because for different kids, like different amounts of that feedback and reinforcement will be effective. And by allowing them to choose, again, they've made that clear expectation right from the start. They're the one who chose, and it's going to help with completion, to help with that persistence and buy-in all the way toward completed the task. In a similar vein, I will do that similar type of drill play activity, again with stickers or paint daubers, bingo daubers, maybe some of my special markers, just in some of those daub type activities, because that's great. That gives, again, a really clear expectation of how many we're doing. Although for kids, depending on their interest and the time constraints we have, maybe they get to do 2 per turn or more. Get that exchange back in it, but still with a bit of playfulness. And then even if I don't have the turns, I might just use a shape that reinforces a theme or another concept that I'm working on, which I've referenced a few times now. So let's just talk a little bit more about that. Themes is one of my favorite things. This is true in my life. My kids know I love a theme. It's a way to help to sort of organize some concepts and some vocabulary and motifs. We talk about later in literature, those reoccurring common ideas that are going to carry some meaning with them, but they can also reinforce understanding, especially for our preschoolers, because a lot of the time they're surrounded by some of those symbols and motifs. When they go out in the community or the mall or the library, they're seeing decorations and books and things for sale that relate to a holiday or a time of year. So helping kids become more familiar with that vocabulary is going to be really functional in their day-to-day world. And then vice versa, that familiarity is going to help make it more accessible and possibly more motivating as you do the activities. So like I would take this time of year, I mean, it's spring in Alberta, you could be working on snowflakes and snowmen or puddles and umbrellas. But I also like to do the holidays and just finding little things to add to some of the things we've already talked about in terms of some of the sequencing games or games with pieces. So again, I'm maybe using shapes and stickers that reinforce those themes. I'm thinking about seeking. Maybe I'm using these to either the little pots of gold or the gold itself to hide with some of my picture cards, or I'm using to do with my question words. And then choosing other resources to reinforce that. So, choosing the literature, or using a book to talk about some of those same ideas. Even, sometimes in the rewards or the reinforcers, we're going to look at reinforcing that same vocabulary. If we want to go to games that are more like your typical turn-taking game, I really like ones that have a concrete element. So Shaky Shark is one of my very favorite, very concrete. You put the fishies in, and then eventually he's going to snap. And he's going to it's intermittent reinforcement again. You don't know when it's going to happen, so it's going to keep kids, even the ones who are scared. It's a fun scare, right? And so it's going to keep them engaged and trying. To be honest, I'm a little bit tricky, and usually I'm probably going to use this like a game with pieces. So we're going to trade to get the little parts to put in. Then we're going to do it like a game of turns, where we're taking turns putting the pieces in and see who gets snapped. I'll often try and pick those to reinforce something that's going on in the environment. So, for example, during playoffs, we did a lot of the hockey game where we earned the pucks, and then we got to take turns scoring or trying to get a goal into the net. And then I have my frozen ones with snowflakes, which you can use about 6 months of the year. And again, that's really great, fun, motivating, because it's going to pop, and you're going to get that little bit of excitement, but you don't know when, so it keeps kids engaged, and keep the boss for that all year round as well. I have done a pretty good job of being able to talk for almost an hour straight, and I still have so many things I would still like to share with you. I guess the last, if I have to choose a couple others, didn't really talk about things with movement. So one of the things I like to do there is an obstacle course. And so sometimes that can just purely be where we're working on different patterns of movement, but also looking at some of those position words again, where we're going through a tunnel, we're going over the cushion, we're going under the table, and then we're going around the chairs, and we're working on that while getting some movement. Maybe I also put at each of the stations a little bit of a challenge. So a target word or a picture that they're going to tell me about, or where they have to find at each stage one of those objects that fit our target skill that we already collected from a different activity. Books, if you're there's already been a presentation just on the wonder of books, but that is one of my favorite things, and we could talk about almost any skill or any activity in that way, making it interactive and really taking time to pull out and give extra opportunities for either that sound or that word or that letter or whatever it is that you're trying to reinforce. I would, at this point, say that the recording is closed. We'll close the session in terms of recording, and then if there was people who wanted to ask questions that didn't want to be on screen, but we'll leave that to if you have questions or